Welcome back everyone, my name is WirthyPickle and this is your channel for all things Starfield. Today we're going to be diving deep into everything that we know about ships in Starfield. I'm going to break down and simplify the ship systems and stats. We're also going to look at the customization system for your ships, what crews are going to look like, and lastly, what type of encounters we can expect while we're out and about in space. Also, for those of you that enjoy speculation, I'm also going to talk about my thoughts on whether or not we can own large ships like the battleship UC Vigilance or the party cruise ship that we saw in the showcase, and I'll be discussing that speculation at the end of this video. As always though, thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching the video. It's been amazing to see just how many of you are as excited for Starfield as I am. If you do enjoy this video though and you want to see more, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into Starfield ship systems and stats. Now, whether we like it or not, we're going to be spending hours of our time on our ship. So it comes to no surprise that close to a third of this last showcase was focused on ships, our encounters in space, customizing our ships, assigning crew members, everything revolving ships. It took a lot of that recent showcase. So with all this time that we'll be spending on our ships, it's going to be really important that we understand how our ship works and how to understand the stats when we're looking at customizing our ship. So let's look at our starter ship, the Frontier, to break it down. The first system to pay attention to is the reactor or power system shown here up at the top left. Based on your reactor power output, you'll have an equal amount of these notches that you can allocate to different parts of your ship. So in this case, our reactor puts out 14 power, so then we have 14 of these little notches that we can put in any of these 6 parts of our ship. We're going to talk more about this a little bit later in the video when we get to the combat and encounters, but for now, to keep it simple, we have lasers, ballistics, and missiles as our primary method of dealing damage. So you're going to want to invest more here if you plan to be in combat. You can also invest in engines to increase your ship's speed. We also have shield to increase your ability to withstand damage. This essentially recharges your shield faster. And then lastly, we have the grav drive. So if you want to warp out of combat or warp faster or slower, you'll want to allocate more or less in this section. Keep in mind, you're going to be constantly changing these stats on the go. If you're wandering around and just exploring, you're going to want to put these stats in the engine and grav drive to make things a little more convenient. But if you're jumping into combat, you're going to want to quickly move these notches into your weapons and shields so you don't get absolutely wrecked by an enemy ship. The next section that we can see shows our fuel, hull, and cargo. Fuel shows how far we'll be able to grav jump before we need to refuel. And this is going to directly tie in with our jump range that you can see down here. You can't travel further than your jump range in a single jump, but you can grav jump multiple times back to back as long as you don't run out of fuel. So in my opinion, it sounds like upgrading your total fuel would be the easier and cheaper way of traveling to further solar systems than increasing your jump range as a whole. That's a bit more expensive to upgrade. Now, when it comes to your ship's health, you actually have 2 different metrics to look at. You have your hull health, which here we see is 366, but you also have your shield capacity down here. Once your shield is broken, the enemy will start damaging your hull. We also know that enemies can damage specific parts of your ship, so they can destroy your fuel tanks, weapon systems, or even your thrusters. We don't know exactly how that's going to work, or if it's going to cost money to repair the ship, or if it repairs over time, but just something to keep in mind when you're looking at staying alive and not blowing up in space. Moving down, we have cargo capacity. A few things to note here. They really overloaded the ship with storage, so we know that is possible to do, and if it's anything like past Bethesda games, there's normally a negative effect to this. In most of their games, you just run much slower or be forced to walk, so I'm assuming we would be able to fly much slower if we are over-encumbered, or we won't be able to grav jump if we are beyond a certain limit of being over-encumbered. There's also this little section here called shielded capacity. On the surface, it sounds like this would be cargo that's protected by our shield, but I actually think that this is cargo that is protected from contraband scanners. We don't know, but that's going to be my guess.
Maintain your current course while we scan your ship's cargo. Scan complete.
We can also see our crew capacity here. To start out, we can only have 2 crew members, but as you'll see later in this video, this can be increased or decreased depending on how you customize the ship. And lastly, we can see whether or not the ship is registered, the value of the ship, and the mass. Again, we're going to get into this a little more later. It'll make sense when we get into customization and random encounters. I also forgot to mention the lasers, ballistic, and missile numbers that you see here is just the overall rating of the weapon systems on your ship. Alright, we've been talking lots of numbers, so let's take a quick break from the ship systems and stats, and let's talk about some random encounters that we can expect while we're in our ship. We'll often stumble upon other ships while exploring. Some of these just want to talk, extend side quests, or even want to trade. Others are going to try to attack and steal our cargo. As always, we have the choice to do what we want. Nothing is stopping us from boarding a friendly ship, pretending to trade, and then murdering all of them just because we like how their ship looks and we want to steal it. One of my favorite features is the ability to board a ship and interact with other people in person. If we're being attacked, we can shoot out their engines so that they're immobile, board their ship, kill their crew, steal their supplies, and even sell their ship for cash. If that's too much work, you can always just blow them up and loot the scraps without even leaving your ship. You can also come across random places like shipyards, similar to a city on a planet. You can dock, talk with people for various missions, but you can also find unique upgrades and new ships to buy. I feel like this one would be pretty cool because it's a bunch of random people gathering together at a shipyard. Every time you land, I'm sure there's a lot of different people, and it's not the same type of cycle of people like a city would be. You can also dock with giant Star Wars types battleships. These are very similar to No Man's Sky. You can actually see they have fleets of smaller ships surrounding that single ship. You can also find random cruise ships that are full of the wealthy elite of the settled systems. I'm curious to see with these if their rewards or payouts are going to be bigger than the average side quest because they are so wealthy. And then one really unique encounter that they show is coming across a group of people that thought they were the only ones to leave Earth. So they have all these plants and different things set up to be self-sufficient on their ship. This one we're going to talk a little bit more about later because it does make me question a few things that not many people are talking about. But first, let's look at how combat will work. We've explained how most of these systems work already. You have a point system you'll be constantly changing to make sure you have enough power as you need to your weapons and shield while in a fight. You're also going to want to invest in the targeting control system pretty early on. This essentially gives you a VAT system in your ship to target specific parts of the enemy ships. This will make disabling and boarding other ships much easier. It's also important to note, while you have a general number rating for the strength of your weapons, investing more notches in your weapon systems doesn't necessarily make them more powerful. It does, however, make them reload quicker, giving you more of an edge when attacking the enemy. You can see here, when you shoot, the total ammo goes down. Once you stop firing, you have a short delay before the ammo starts refilling. So allocating more power to your weapons will let you fire more consistently because it does reload the weapon quicker with a shorter delay. You're also going to want to prioritize what weapon system you use depending on what you're trying to do. From this, we can see that energy affects shield more, while ballistic damages the hull more, and EM weapons are better at targeting specific systems. So picking the right weapon for the job will make you that much more deadly. Alright, now it's time to talk about the most complex part of this video, and that's the shipbuilding and customization. It's hard to know everything about shipbuilding before we get our hands on the game, but I'm going to do my best to walk you through what we know from the showcase. When looking at your ship, you have two main options at the bottom of the screen. You can enter the more complex ship builder if you want to build your ship from scratch or change a lot of the settings there, or you can just easily upgrade specific aspects of your ship with this second option. So let's first look at the upgrader. I imagine a lot of you will actually just use the upgrader option because it is so simple. The ship builder is going to be a lot more complex, and you'll see that in a second, but I imagine a lot of you are going to be buying a pre-made ship and then using the upgrader to make it better versus spending the hours on end building your ship from scratch. Maybe I'm wrong, but I imagine once we actually get our hands on the game, we'll be surprised just how many people don't want to mess with the ship builder. Alright, there's a lot to break down with the upgrader, so let's get started. At the very bottom, you see a general summary of your ship stats that we broke apart a little bit earlier, just looked a little bit different. Just above that, you see the different parts you can easily upgrade. We see 3 weapons, engines, and shield, though there's arrows on each side, so I imagine you can upgrade pretty much every part of your ship through this upgrader just by scrolling to the side and picking the part that you want to upgrade. So let's say we want to upgrade our weapon. Clicking on that option opens up this menu. We can see a list of available weapons from the vendor on the right. Each one has different stats shown on the left. We see range, fire rate, hull damage, shield damage, max power, hull, and crew capacity. One thing to note is just how expensive an upgrade is. This dragon laser costs almost as much as our entire ship. So if you want tips on how to make money through settlement building, be sure to watch my settlement building guide. You're also going to want to invest in the starship design skill if you want better weapons and modules for your ship. There's quite a few upgrades we see in this showcase that require higher skill ratings in this, so don't neglect it. If you want more customization options though, the ship builder option is going to be better for you. Here you can move, upgrade, and build everything about your ship. So here's a quick overview of all the components of your ship. We have the cowling, which is mostly cosmetic, the shield generator, the docker, which allows you to dock with enemy ships in space, fuel tanks, the grav drive, weapons, various habs, engines, the cockpit, cargo hold, the reactor, the bay, and the landing gears. In this clip, we see a few options for habs. Just within this Nova hab, there's various styles and options to choose from. Each one serves a different purpose. We see an all-in-one option, an armory, a captain's quarters, a computer core, and a control station. Each one has different amounts of control stations for crews. It adds different amounts of hull health and features that it can bring your ship. Once we pick the style that suits us best, we can take apart and place the hab where we want it to be, and the blue circles indicate snap points where we can actually place that item. It seems that habs are going to be the biggest part of interior customization we're going to have. I'll show you some of these options on the screen now, but each one is very different and serves a very different purpose. If you want a room to store all your weapons and armor, or a place to call home and have your own bedroom, or even have a section of the ship dedicated to your crew to sleep or work, habs are where you're going to find these options. Habs are what makes your ship feel like home. Habs are also where you're going to make your ship productive. It's important to place the workstations that you actually want to focus on, so if you want to make your ship a flying research lab or have your crew manufacture items on the go, the habs are going to be where you do that. I'll also add something as simple as a single hab that has a mass of 8 will lower your mobility and jump range rather significantly. So shipbuilding is going to be a game of balance, making sure you have the things that you want, but you also got to make sure that you have the power to sustain those modules, and mass is going to be a big player in that. Here we see some options for cowling, as I mentioned earlier. They're mostly cosmetic, but they do add mass and value to your ship. After that, they show us an upgraded grav drive, allowing us to grav jump further and quicker. This one happens to be a class A, but based on the stats of this particular grav drive, I don't think the class indicates how good or bad it is, but maybe it's just the style or type of grav drive. We also see that we can fully customize the color of each part of our ship. They then show us this massive cockpit that holds up to 8 crew stations. You can see the inside of the ship here as well. One thing I did notice is that this cockpit has multiple pilot seats. I'm wondering what type of effect this will have on our flying if we assign crew members to fly with us or pilot with us. I'm assuming that it's going to greatly increase our maneuverability, but let me know what you guys think. Now, one thing that really surprised me in this showcase is that the cargo holds aren't just something we see from the outside like most games, but they're physical rooms that we can walk into. One of the developers uses this as a stash for the sandwiches she collects. I imagine my cargo holds will also be full of some random stuff that I pick up. But we don't really know whether our ship cargo is going to be filled with items that we randomly place inside the ship, such as items like sandwiches that we place on a table or drop on the ground, or if that number simply includes the items we store in crates in those cargo holds. I imagine our total cargo will include those items we drop on the ground, but we don't know that just yet. Next, we see a landing bay. The biggest thing to note here is just how customizable shipbuilding is. We can place a landing bay here on the back of the ship at the bottom. It doesn't have to be in the center like most of the starter ships showed us. However, there are rules that need to be followed. We can see this by the warning or error messages in the bottom right-hand corner while we're building. Of course, each ship is going to be required to have things like a reactor, pilot seat, fuel, and engines to even fly, but we don't know what other rules have to apply for the ship design to be successful. Now that we have a good overview of the shipbuilder, let's take a look at a few different ship designs that they showed us in the showcase just to see how much freedom we have with our shipbuilding. I also want to take this time to thank those of you who have made it this far in the video. If you are enjoying so far, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all the new Starfield content that I'll be coming out with. So how will crews play a part in our starships? If you've seen my settlement breakdown video, you already have a good idea of what crews do in Starfield. They do work a little bit different though between settlements and ships, so let's take a look at what we know about our ship crew. Crew members can be acquired by progressing the main story with Constellation members. You can also find them while you're out adventuring or hire them at spaceports. Each crew member will have a unique skill set that they can contribute to your outpost or your ship. So you'll also have to choose whether or not the member will best fit the role on the ship or in settlements. But let's put settlements to the side and just focus on ships by looking at the different skills that we'll want for our ship crew. So the first person that we see is Sarah. With her, she has the skill of astrodynamics. While we haven't really seen this skill in action based on what astrodynamics is, it most certainly gives fuel and jump distance buffs to your ship. Hers has quite a few stars, so this one's going to be really good. We also see lasers. This one, when we saw it in the showcase, it didn't specify if it was for just handheld weapons or for ships as well. We know that ships, you are able to have laser weapons, so I'm sure it benefits that as well. And then we see leadership and botany, which aren't specific to ships, so we are just going to skip those. After Sarah, we see Sam. He specializes in piloting, which will assist in your ship's maneuverability in and out of combat. So this is going to be a must-have on your crew for that reason alone. He's also rather adept in payload skill, which will automatically boost how much cargo you can hold, which is fantastic. Rifle and geology won't really help us on our ship crew, so we aren't going to discuss those either. Moving on to my guy Barrett, starship engineering skill is required for some components of upgrading your ship, similar to a skill that we discussed earlier. But Barrett, having him on your ship maybe allow you to skip upgrading that skill and still be able to upgrade those components. I'm not completely sure on that, but that would be pretty sweet. We also see the particle beam weapon system. That one's pretty straightforward. This will improve the particle beam weapons that you have on your ship. Robots won't really help much, or robotics. Gastronomy, though, gives the user better crafting options for food. So I wonder if assigning Barrett to a workbench on your ship would allow him to craft better foods while you're out and about and just kind of automate that process. That would be pretty sweet, but we don't really know if that's going to be an option. The next one we see is a random person that we can hire at a spaceport. Shotguns really won't help a ship out, but like lasers, I assume ballistics will also help the ballistic weapons on our ship. And then the last one is the particle beam weapon system that we just talked about. The last crew member we see is Heller. He can be acquired through a random encounter by stumbling upon him and saving him. He has geology and outpost engineering, which means he's completely useless to our ship, so you might as well just murder him and steal his stuff. All right, guys, we're almost done. The last thing we'll talk about with crews is the crew roster that you can see here. This shows each member of the crew that we just talked about in a simple to read format, where you can then choose where you'd like each member to work, whether on the outpost or on the starship, just based on the skills that they do have. The only thing that's new here is the mini bot here at the bottom. We know that they can work on our outpost, but we actually haven't seen them working on our ships, so I'd be kind of curious to see if we can assign them to some type of role on our starship. I did promise you that I'd talk about my thoughts on whether or not we can purchase and fly larger ships like the battleship that we saw in the showcase. Now, while nothing is confirmed, there are two things that we saw that make me think it may just be possible. The first thing is the fact that when we saw the large battleship, it takes us inside the ship, and we see the very same command table that is standard on our ships as well. Well, this could simply just be cosmetic and Bethesda trying to keep everything universal. If we could fly one of these massive ships, it would be required to have this table, so it may just be possible to use that table ourselves. The second reason why I think it may just be possible is because of the assets that we see on the ship of the people who thought they were the only ones to leave Earth. These people on their ship have indoor plots for growing crops, and they're actually quite a bit different from the ones that we see on the settlements. So I don't think that they're made for just this ship alone, but they would use those assets somewhere else. And I think it would be very possible for us to own a large ship and have our own crop farms that are automated on our ship. If that were the case, we may just be able to have our own massive ship that we could have that crop farm on. Now, full disclosure, I may have just had one too many skumas, but let me know what you guys think in the comments section. All right, that is everything that we know so far about starships and Starfield. I just spent the last 12 hours making this video, so I'm going to go grab some Aurora from Neon and take a nap. But thank you all for watching all the way through, and be sure to stick around for my next Starfield video. Until next time, stay worthy.